day one, there's an assumption that you just know now how to do all of the things that you're expected to
Right.
do. And so I was quite overwhelmed with the pace, the rigor, and I have to say, suffered significant imposter syndrome. I wasn't confident in my humility. I wanted to present an air of, I've got this, I'm deserving of this role, I can do this role. And it was really hard for me to be vulnerable. And I needed to learn the hard way, which is often the case for me. I needed to learn the hard way that the only way to do this job is to be able to do it through humility and through vulnerability and be confident in that vulnerability.
Energy, confidence, and humility. Those three words came up over and over again in this episode's podcast of the Canadian Education Leadership Show with Evelyn Giannopoulos, Associate Director of Schools in Upper Grand School District in Ontario. I had known Evelyn through social. She's pretty active on social media, as am I, and has seen her name run through, but never connected. So I'm bold. I just asked people, hey, you want to be on my show? And she said yes. And we just had a tremendous conversation. And her enthusiasm and energy really just shines through, even in our conversations that we had before we recorded and during the recording. And it was just so great to learn about her. The theme of self-awareness is certainly one that comes through in so many of my interviews with Canadian education leaders. There is that degree of self-awareness to know that just when you're saying things that resonate and when you're not, and just checking in all the time on your own leadership. And Evelyn is exemplary of that particular trait. So we had a great conversation, just a little bit more digging in a little bit around women in leadership and how that's certainly a challenge, and the things that she's done in her career to overcome that and deal with that. And she's very excited to be in a new district, and talks about psychological safety and things of that nature, and her challenges that she faces with a pretty significant one-to-one deployment that the district is looking to get into really quickly here. Great to add Evelyn to my list of network peoples, and I hope you enjoy today's discussion and conversation with Evelyn Giannopoulos.
I've been interviewing who are quite new to their district. That's you, right? You're pretty new to Upper Grand. How'd you end up there?
Yeah, so grateful to be here, first of all, in the Upper Grand District School Board. I started there right out of Teachers College, and spent a few years teaching there, and then quickly moved over to the Waterloo Region District School Board. And my whole career was with Waterloo. Teacher there, vice principal, superintendent. And after 8 years as a superintendent, I think, and still with time left in my career, I started to think about what was next for me. And sometimes the what was next, it didn't even fit within the Waterloo Region District School Board in terms of what might be another opportunity for me to continue my learning and leading. And so when this opportunity presented itself in the Upper Grand District School Board, which I say to everyone has been just an absolute gift from the universe. It is the closest district school board to the Waterloo region. It is one that I'm very familiar with in that we have had many school leaders both in Waterloo region who lived in the Guelph area and vice versa. So a lot of connections and intersections within the district school boards, given the geography of the two boards being so close. The opportunity presented itself and was one that just seemed to align so well with my skill set. The role in and of itself was an opportunity for me to continue to lead a higher scale and level. It presented a challenge in terms of opportunities for learning and growth, and also provided a beautiful hybrid in that it is one where two ADs within the district school board have responsibilities both for the academic side of the organization in addition to the service side of the organization. And so my role is unique in that I have responsibilities for schools and superintendents and certainly the school learning and improvement portfolio that is very near and dear to my heart, while also having responsibility for our digital innovation, our digital supports department, IT department, if you will, transportation, and all of those other areas within the service side of the organization that I haven't had direct responsibility for. So it did present itself as such a rich opportunity for learning. And then again, just given my comfort in knowing a lot about the culture of the district school board, and most importantly, the leadership. Because when you join a role like AD, it's not just a one position, it's one position on a team.
Mhm.
And I really needed to consider the team that I'd be joining. And I
Absolutely.
feel that as I was looking at my next step in my career, I have to say I was pretty discerning around what that would mean for me in terms of what I knew I could give to the role, but then also what I knew I needed in terms of my own continued learning and growth and development as well. So a real win. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I'm just thrilled. I can't even wipe the smile off my face. It's wonderful.
I want to talk about that smile in just a second. But before I do, I was just thinking as you're describing your kind of journey, and you're at a stage in your career where you've obviously developed a lot of confidence. So a lot of the criteria that you laid out to say, I want to take this risk, step, whatever, you were also pretty confident to know that this is the right move. Now, when you go back to your young days as a teacher in Halton and all the steps you made along the way, like you said, principal, superintendent, can you were those transitions similar in that did you share that confidence when you went from teacher to principal to superintendent? Was any of those jumps, if you will, I'm trying to identify if there was a jump in there that was more difficult than this one, or maybe this one was more
Sure.
difficult, like how the because I doubt if they were all exactly this smooth transition that you've
No.
experienced this time.
No, they're all very unique. I'd say the biggest jump for me was teacher to VP and then P to so teacher to VP, I think I had a sense of what the role entailed. I thought as an educator, I knew what was happening in the office on a day to day and what the expectations were. And I'd even spent the years just prior to becoming a vice principal as a guidance head and special education resource teacher as well. So I was in that role of serving as a resource and support for the school, for my colleagues on the staff, in addition to really engaging in meaningful and thoughtful ways with our families, right? But when I stepped into the role as a VP and realized how complex, how fast paced, how many decisions need to be made in any given moment at any given time, and the fact that you've now entered that role, right? Day one, there's an assumption that you just know now how to do all of the things that you're expected to
Right.
do. And so I was quite overwhelmed with the pace, the rigor, and I have to say, suffered significant imposter syndrome. I wasn't confident in my humility. I wanted to present an air of, I've got this, I'm deserving of this role, I can do this role. And it was really hard for me to be vulnerable. And I needed to learn the hard way, which is often the case for me. I needed to learn the hard way that the only way to do this job is to be able to do it through humility and through vulnerability and be confident in that vulnerability.
I feel that as a woman, that can be more difficult than for a man, right? Like a man gets away with certain things that women don't. I want to go back even to you as a teenager, a young girl. Were you a very confident young woman who thought at some point in your time, as we all do when we're younger, that you've got it all figured out? Did you feel that way as young, or is that because again, women today I think is better, but even if you go back, I know you're younger than I am, but you're also grew up in an era where maybe women as leaders was not as much of a thing, I suppose, that it is today. So I don't know what your perspective was as a young person.
Yeah, so fair enough. I think I've been fortunate that I've been surrounded by some pretty strong female role models, my mother being one of them. And I think she really instilled in me right from a very young age how important education was and how important being able to stand on my own 2 feet. It was just paramount that I really did, despite growing up in in a Greek family and born and raised by a first generation Greek. And both my parents immigrated here from Greece in the 60s. She was very much one who reinforced and modeled for me the importance of being able to stand on your own 2 feet and not rely on others to create your path and to support you in that pathway. So I think from an early on, that was very much her and other very strong role models that I had. For sure, I was confident, but at the same time, I didn't view myself through the lens of a leader, to your point. As I was growing up, particularly in the world of education, many of my elementary school teachers, of course, were female. And as I moved into secondary school, my secondary school principals and vice principals, all male, right?
Right.
And we start to see that, especially in our generation. Um, and so I think for me now, stepping into this role, I'm ever aware of the gender dynamic that exists and continues to exist in leadership, particularly as I've stepped into this role of leading DSS, our Digital Support Services Department, our IT department, which is quite predominantly male heavy and white male heavy, I'd also like to say. And it's pushed me to really lean into the confident humility that I had talked about earlier, in that I needed to put on the table right away this learning journey that I was on. It's a whole new language. DS, the world of IT and software vetting and cybersecurity and hardware. My goodness, never mind AI, right? And the literacy and the fluency that's required around all of those pieces. But I needed to present it in a way that I'm ready to do the work and lean into the work. I am a learner, but I also have a tremendous skill set to bring to the table in terms of my ability to think strategically, to really analyze and think about our strategy around implementation and monitoring of our plan, how to bring people into the plan, how to ensure that we have ongoing and frequent feedback loops and communication loops, and that we're including the necessary stakeholders in the development of our strategy as well and in our work. So I know what I'm confident in and what I can bring to the table, but then also have the self awareness to know there's a whole lot that I don't know, and I'm going to need to lean in and learn and do that before I even move into a place of leading.
And that's such a fantastic disposition for any learner to have, right? Is the confidence that I can do this and I have some skills, but there's lots of stuff I don't know.
Yeah.
And wouldn't we want everyone to adopt that kind of posture? And again, I think in order to get there, uh, especially in the dynamic you've spoken of, I feel like you got to build some trust with people because otherwise, I don't know what game are you playing a game here or is this authentically right? There's a little bit of that. And you mentioned when we first started and when we've talked before and when I've seen you, you say, I can't wipe the smile off my face. And
Yeah.
you are a very energetic, vibrant person and you bring this really positive energy.
Yeah.
Um, how is that just you, or are there things that you are really intentional about to make sure that that's the vibe I'm
Yeah.
looking for? So I don't know what you think, how you bring that energy into the workplace every day.
Yeah.
Is that a new thing for you, or you've always been that way?
Yeah. So I think my disposition has always been really positive and optimistic and energetic. I think I've always felt like super efficacious in my role, that I have a good sense of how to go about it. And if I don't, again, I know who I can talk to and who can help me work that through. So, yeah, from a disposition or my natural default setting, yeah, I think I do often err on the side of being quite optimistic and happy and grateful and super passionate about the work. Um, I do have to say that being here in the Upper Grand and in this role has certainly amplified this for me. You can't underestimate the power of an organization's culture, and a culture that supports innovation and risk taking, who models the confident humility that I feel is the theme of our talk here, which is really one that we know what we know we can do and what we need to do in terms of our priorities and goals, and a laser focus on our goals. But we also feel that we need to investigate. We need to
Yeah.
learn more, right? We need to better understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and we need to work through those solutions together. So the organization is one that I've described as being incredibly psychologically safe for me and for the team. People do feel an ability to speak openly and honestly, to ask, to critically examine, challenge, offer feedback in really meaningful and authentic ways. There's a sense of alignment and a mission that we're all working on and working together, and that we all bring our own unique strengths and areas for continued learning and growth as well. But given that we are all, it feels as though we're all just working towards the same end goal. I know whenever I've had a question, a wondering, I needed clarification on anything, I could go to anyone, not only on my team or my director or my associate director colleague, but anyone within the organization who are
Nice.
all too happy to open the door to invite you in and engage in a learning conversation with you. And for me, learning is such a huge part of me and who I am that it really just continues to inspire me and motivate me each and every day. Yeah, the conditions here have definitely helped to amplify, I guess, my natural default settings. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be here.
And again, this is a theme that I've heard in a few of those interviews with folks who are new to a district. And I don't think it's a honeymoon phase because I think people of your stature are smart enough to figure out if
Mm,
it's authentic or not.
right.
So then we use the word culture.
Yes.
And culture is it's this very elusive, sometimes it's an elusive idea as to how does it exactly happen? Because in education in particular, one of the challenges that we face in some cases is like a rapid turnover. So here's a principal, they're in a school for 3 years, they do amazing stuff, they leave, and the next person comes in, and what happens? Does that
Yeah.
stuff get to continue? Is somebody starting fresh? And so those that are left behind are they've got their arms crossed, waiting to see what's this person going to do. Are they gonna change something? Or who are they? So all that time it takes to build that trust makes sometimes culture a difficult thing to sustain. But I'm wondering, even in your short tenure with Upper Grand, you've about got all these people who are willing to help you and there's all of those things. Is there anything else that you've noticed that you might put your finger on and say the culture is this way because of what? I don't know if there's any factors you've been able to look at and think that might be contributing to that.
Yeah. So the factors that I'd say that contribute is, I think, a real alignment in priorities and the vision for the organization. I think it's very clear. It's clear, clearly articulated. The multi-year strategic plan has been created through significant stakeholder consultation. Everyone's had a voice, is what I'm trying to
Yep.
really reinforce. So people see themselves in the work. The goals that we have are incredibly aspirational and student centered, but they also recognize the need that we're all in it together, right? That everyone plays a vital and critical role in the success of our students. I think also the fact that it is such a community district school board as well, in terms of just the deep rooted connections
Yeah.
that I've come to realize and learn, the connections within community, across communities, the even just the interaction that I've noted between our trustees, our families within school communities and different constituency groups. It's a real community feel where everyone is aligned towards the same goal. And that's ensuring that we are prioritizing and serving our students each day.
Does Upper Grand consider itself rural?
I don't know that it would consider itself rural. We do have definitely we do have rural areas,
Right.
but we have very balanced rural versus urban setting and
Mhm.
demographic where our schools are situated. Yes.
It's interesting. The reason I ask that is because I feel that there's some advantage to those people whose community
Hmm.
experience is seen as, even if by whatever measure, maybe they're more urban than their demographic, but they feel that, right? Because there has to be that kind of, hey, we're
Yes.
in this together feeling, which is very difficult to achieve in more urban settings. It's just hard to do, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think back to the culture question that we talked about, you can't underestimate the sense of belonging, right? Even
mhm.
just the sense of belonging that I felt so early on joining this organization, a sense of belonging, a sense of being heard, seen, valued, being able to just show up as your authentic self as your true self is really something that I've noticed in our organization for sure.
You talked before about excited about an innovative spirit. So tell me a little bit about the digital support services and the things you're excited to see happen in that area, as whether it's the AI conversation or other things. Like what do you sort of
Yeah.
see the future looking like?
Yeah. So I have to tell you, another big pull for me to this position and to the work was really around the forward thinking of this district school board. I'd say a provincial leader as it comes to leaning into innovation, innovative practices, and the meaningful integration of AI in our work. I noticed early on, gosh, when did ChatGPT first come on scene? Like fall of 2022. My daughter at the time in university, her third year,
Kill your daughter.
is still my daughter. My daughter's
Good
still my daughter,
at the
who at
time
the
she was.
time was in her third year. Yes. I watched how she engaged with the tool, and I was absolutely fascinated and terrified at the same time.
Mhm.
And from there, it ignited for me just a moral imperative to understand, learn more, and to get ahead of understanding how this is going to impact the way in which we engage in teaching, assessment, evaluation, and how kids learn. Total game changer. And so for me, when I saw that the position was to support that work and knowing that I was already on my own personal passion project, if you will, engaging in learning opportunities, really thinking about the world of AI independently, joined the ECNO board of directors just to continue to learn more. I was really pulled to the work. So here we are. And now it's about how do we ensure that given our recent PPM here in Ontario too, which has been really clear about banning our cell phone usage in our classrooms, recognizing that we want to ensure that our students are still having access and equitable access to technology. We're working on a really aggressive one-to-one hardware deployment plan.
Nice.
But given the fact that I come from the education sector and my world has always been living and breathing in school settings, I think that adds a benefit to the conversations that I'm having within our organization and within our department, who by and large are not educators, right? They come to it from their own tech background. And so we are coming into conversations around it's not so much the supply of the tech, right? It's not about going out to buy 10,000 Chromebooks and putting them in classrooms by the end of December, but it's really around how are we meaningfully integrating technology into students' educational experiences. And so my work is to integrate and intersect with our program staff and to think about ways in which we are maximizing that learning environment for our students in classes while using the tool of technology. So it's a massive undertaking. I think one can underestimate it as just a technical challenge of purchasing devices and allocating them out to schools, but we recognize the significant adaptive challenges that are coming with it as well and working towards that. So for it,
Yeah.
it's the hardware, but then it's also the capacity. I think it's about the supply of the tool, but then also the demand. How are we cultivating that demand on the part of our students and our school leaders to see technology as a lever to accelerate teaching and learning and student
Well,
and
yeah. And I think that the structure that you've described is so important. I think about my role in my former school board where I was the educational side of the IT conversation. And I could listen, I had some IT knowledge and background, but when they go down the networking path, yeah, that's stuff that servers and all kinds of things of that nature. And
yeah,
there's lots of things that wasn't in my lane, but could always bring it back to the conversation around, yeah, that's great. How is that going to help a kid learn? Like, why
right.
is that the best way to do this? And so, because I always feel that this tension, unfortunately, I think this tension still exists in so many places, is that IT has an agenda, if you will, and not a bad one, but just it's not always aligned. And we don't always help our colleagues understand that. Yeah, I think you're setting yourself up for a lot more success than other places where they live separately and they go their own way. And then every once in a while they come back together and they find out, oh, we're not in alignment here. And now there's tension and problems. And somebody went ahead with a decision that's not really in the best interest. And now so I think structures are important here.
Yeah, incredibly important. And so I think for us, it's continuing to just take risks, right? We are investigating a variety of tools, particularly Gen AI tools that can help support our educators and most certainly achieve the promise of personalized learning and opportunities for our educators to really understand in real time what the learning needs are of each and every student. But then again, even looking at it from the lens of my daughter in the example that I gave you there, um, how can we even maximize AI to even serve as a personal thinking partner or a critical friend or someone that you can just go back and forth with as you iterate and ideate through challenges and learning opportunities. So there's just so much potential and so much promise. And so I'm really grateful to be in an environment where we're leaning into it,
Mhm.
but also being very mindful and cautious around our responsibility as an organization when it comes to ethical and equitable considerations as well.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at in my work is that, yeah, I can share with you lots of positive ways to use it, but I always come up to the place where, wait a minute, is this how I want to use AI? Is this the right way to use it? What am I robbing myself of in this case? Let alone what might a 16-year-old rob themselves of using it? And those are just, they're not easy answers. They're complex, nuanced kinds of things that
Challenging.
that
Yeah,
and this is where this isn't a conversation to have with you and the IT people. This is like organizationally wide conversations to
absolutely.
have. And so I'm finding it, I guess I'm excited simply by the fact that we're able to engage in these rich conversations across everywhere, right? So you talked about that you're also looking after transportation and things like that. Those
Mhm.
folks are
Yes.
experiencing this as well and trying. I had a teacher in Vancouver come up to me and tell me, he was a younger teacher, a little sheepishly saying, I've been using it to create these lessons and do
Uh-huh.
different things. Am
Yeah.
I cheating? Like he
Yeah.
asked me if he was cheating as a teacher.
Yes.
And again, my response was like, I don't think so. But at the same time, he was, yeah, he was actually processing, what am I actually doing? Is this something I should be doing without the aid of technology? Or is technology really helping me? And yeah, it's fascinating stuff to try to think through. And
Yeah. And
knowing that it's moving
yeah,
so quickly that
that's just
meanwhile,
it.
while you're having that thought in your head, things have already changed, right?
Exactly. And how do you try to stay ahead of it? And I don't know that we can. I don't know that's our goal either. It's really just thinking about what will be the best tool or tools to support our educators and ultimately our students. But you're making me think about even just around the automation of tasks, like where are we able to find those efficiencies, not only on the school side or the academic side of the organization, but then on the service side of the organization, to your point around transportation, or
Yeah.
even within our own department in DS as well. Where can we find other efficiencies within our human resources and people leadership and culture department, finance, all of those other areas as well. So the promise again of AI being able to serve as our own assistants, if you will, to help us in those mundane or routine tasks that can be automated in that way in order to free us up to be far more creative and adaptive and to
So,
attend to those adaptive challenges is really where we want to be.
and even to that question. So now here's
Mhm.
where I'm at with the
Yeah.
efficient. Sometimes the question is, why do we want to be more efficient? So I had this conversation with a superintendent who was sharing this with his admin assistant,
Yeah.
all these time saving methods, to which her response was, "Well, does this just mean I have to do, you're just going to give me more work?"
Ugh.
Which was a fair question to ask
Yeah.
because efficiency in the service of what? So
Hmm.
I'm being super intentional now about when I do save myself time, which I
Hmm.
did, which I will in editing this podcast, because this podcast used to take me, will do this recording and then I would go back and edit it and publish it. And it would take me about 3 hours. I have software now that can do a lot of this AI stuff,
Great.
and I'm done in an hour.
Hmm.
What I did with those 2 hours, and I did it last week very intentionally, is I took my grandsons to the park. That was a powerful use of AI, and if AI can do
Absolutely.
that for me, I'm
Absolutely.
really interested in it. But if it's just so, because listen, you and I both, and every educator and person that works in education has jobs that it's never ending. You could have a million hours a week. You'd always find something to do. So there's a
It's never
never ending list of the things we should do. So
exactly.
this is where and again, in my own head, I can't even wrap my head because I'm all with you. If this
Hmm.
can lead us to efficiencies and reduce some of the mundane tasks, but I
Hmm.
want to decide what tasks are mundane, and then I want decision in what I do with that extra time.
Yeah.
So again, it's adding to the layer of complexity of these conversations that
Yes.
require a lot of thought. And again,
Yeah, and I think when we think about many of the challenges that I'm sure you've heard around workload, frankly, and how untenable the work of our educators has become in some instances, our school leaders. I have been pretty open about the fact that I was a school leader over a decade ago, and seeing what our school principals and vice principals are faced with today,
it's
I
not
don't
the
know if
same
I
job.
if I could do it.
It's
It's
not the
not
same
the
job.
same job. It is incredibly complex. The communities in which we are serving now are so polarized. The level of accountability, of scrutiny, social media has entered the building in terms of just your words. You're only as good as your last mistake, I guess you could say. Just very unforgiving environment that
Mhm,
that our leaders
mhm.
find themselves in, the myriad of expectations that are coming at them. We talk about the pie being of an organization, of a district school board, finance, human resources, program, teaching, learning, assessment, evaluation, students with special education needs, all of the expectations that are put upon our principals any given
Yeah.
day, they eat the whole pie every day, right? It's not just one piece of the pie. It's not just I need to think today about staffing my school and making sure that I have an educator in front of each of my students. Is there a teacher in every class today? But it's really around managing all of the expectations, school budgets, adhering to policies, procedures, etc., responding to issues as they come in real time in a really thoughtful and responsive way. And then back to our earlier conversation that we got started on culture,
Yeah.
we're also it's the principle that creates that culture,
Absolutely.
that learning environment within that school and that school community. They have such a critical role in creating that. So the adaptive challenges, the technical challenges, all of it, the whole pie, it's an incredibly complex and challenging role, but it's incredibly rewarding at the same time.
This episode is brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships, also known as ALP. We are a professional learning consulting group that serves communities across North America. We are partners, designers, and agents for change. You can learn more about the work we do at alplearn.com. And now back to the show.
Well, which leads me to my next question is I want you to tell me about a leadership challenge that you have faced. Again, you can go back to your time as a teacher, as a VP, whatever role, but I just wonder if there's one you can think of that sort of sticks with you as that was an important lesson learned. Again, maybe you were successful in overcoming the challenge. Maybe you
Yeah.
weren't, doesn't matter, but it's all learning.
Yeah, I think initially the one that I'm faced with in terms of the the design and the development of our we're calling it the one-to-one hardware strategy here in our board. How do we get devices and the right devices in the hands of our 35,000 students and 5,000 educators, recognizing that we have significant budgetary constraints, right? All of the practicalities and issues that come with procurement and the human resources that are required to even receive that kind of a scale, while also ensuring that we're choosing the right device and developing the capacity of our teachers and knowing how to best maximize and use it, right? In order to respond to student learning need. And so that is a significant challenge that I'm having, but I have to say that I've had a lot of practice with large scale implementation, but not to this degree. And so it is stretching me in really good and important ways as we think about large scale change and large scale implementation. But I think you've pushed me to reflect back on when I first stepped into the role of being a leader. And I really just want to go back to the imposter syndrome that I experienced stepping into the role of a new VP, and then when I moved into a new principal, and again when I became a new superintendent. I joined as a superintendent back in Jeepers 2017, and with the Waterloo Region District School Board. And again, worked really hard for that position and was really, I felt by getting the position of superintendent at that time, I really needed to prove that I was worthy of the role. And so it was very public. The role of superintendent is very much one where you don't have the same level of autonomy as a school principal does in creating and managing expectations within the school site, but one that's done across a team and for the whole organization. And so I found myself learning the hard way again around needing to not put myself in the role of a super principal. And because I felt like I was on a bit of an autopilot by that point after being a school leader for 10 years, that I could go in and support my colleagues in really helping them in executing what their expectations were or supporting them through challenging situations with families or staff members. I needed to shift into a role of really one of more of a critical friend and a thinking partner for them. And there was a significant challenge that I did find myself in, but thankfully was able to sit through it, have some good dialogue and self-reflection, and learn from that moment on that the role of superintendent isn't one of being a super principal. It's really there to help to develop the capacity of our school leaders in order for them to be their best and true authentic selves as well.
Yeah, I think I'm curious one thing when you're talking about the one-to-one thing, and this is just when I work in the US and one-to-one has always been a big push in the US, like it has
Yeah.
been for 10 years and COVID accelerated that. The notion of one-to-one itself in Canada is not really that broad. So what I'm wondering is like when you look around you, can you look to any neighbors, colleagues who might have gone before you in this to be able to support? Because I don't know that many that have actually done this kind of scale of one to one. Like even TDSB wouldn't have. They're not. I don't think they're one to one. They've done probably obviously large scale rollout just because of their size.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. We've engaged with partners in different district school boards who are well on their way in terms of a cadence of deploying the one-to-one strategy within their district school boards. And I think that's what's really powerful about Ontario district school boards. There is such a strong connection across our directors and through the organization of code and P code, especially certainly through are really supportive of one another and do feel a responsibility for each other's success. And if there's challenges that a board is facing, how might we go in and support or swoop in and
sure,
support, if you will? So
right,
we've had the benefit of talking to other district school boards around how they've gone about implementing. For us, I think the one to one really speaks to a need for equity. This is an equity strategy. This is an accessibility strategy. This is one where we want to eliminate the disparity that we know continues to exist in our schools, between schools, for students and for families. And so we want to equal the playing field as best as possible and in every area that we can and that we have impact and influence on. And so if we are saying that we value an online learning environment, a virtual learning environment, in the same way that we view the benefits of a safe and inclusive and accessible physical learning environment, then we want to ensure that we're creating a safe, inclusive, and equitable virtual learning environment as well. And that includes ensuring that every student has the tool that they need in order to access the learning and be successful throughout it as well. So it really is a moral imperative for us as we look to
absolutely.
that one strategy. Mhm.
If you were wandering around in the Upper Ground School District in one of the schools, and a young 25-year-old, could be a female, could be a male, doesn't matter, comes up to you and says, "I'm thinking I'd like to be I'd like to be do some things in educational leadership." What advice would you give 'em?
Oh, So I'd say, as cliche as I know this is going to sound, I'd say start with your why. Like why? What
Hmm.
is it about leadership and in particular educational leadership that lights that fire in your belly? I think as we talked a little bit about my energy and passion and where that comes from, it really is around the why of the work and the
Yeah.
impact that I know I'm having on the lives of children and families and our staff. And I think start with why. What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it that really puts that spring in your step and really find that passion for yourself around educational leadership? I think another piece is around knowing yourself, having self awareness, really having a good sense of what, when you're feeling discomfort, being able to sit in that discomfort and interrogate, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling triggered? What is it that they said or didn't say or didn't do that is making me feel this way? And really interrogate that. So, that introspection, that self reflection is so important. And it's a skill to learn. I also think that another really important piece is recognizing that the role of educational leadership is it's complex, it's nuanced, it's ambiguous. While there are so many technical pieces to the work to respond to and work through, it's highly adaptive in nature. It's so nuanced. You're dealing with humans and people and little people each and every day. And sometimes many of whom, don't make the choices that you would make or decisions that you would make. And so being able to really learn to lean in and to lead from a place of empathy and care and compassion, I think is another piece of advice that I think I would give a 25-year-old as well. And so having those opportunities to practice all of those skills, I think, in your classroom
Yeah.
as you think about educational leadership for sure.
And I think I would argue that the reason that a 25-year-old might even ask you those questions is because you have modeled leadership in a way that seems attractive to others. It says, I think I'd like to do that job one day. And I had people in my life that I looked at and I thought, and again, as we talked about how hard it is to be a principal today, I had principals who I looked and I thought, that looks like an interest. They look like they're enjoying their work. They look like they're having fun. They're making a difference. This seems cool. So we have to have those people in our lives. So this is my
Yeah.
chance to give you an opportunity to send a shout out to somebody that you are grateful for
Oh,
in education. And listen, I asked this question to everybody, and everybody
okay.
said the same thing. It's super hard. How can I nail it down to one? I get it. Sure. There's a thousands of people that probably could be listed, but today you just get to pick one. And bonus, if this could be one person who might listen to this and hear them
Oof.
getting a shout out. Don't Doesn't have to be that, but I'm just laying the groundwork for who to think. So who are you grateful for?
So you're going to force me just to choose one. That's so
I am.
funny.
Yeah, I
I'm
am
like,
doing that.
uh,
Go in there.
okay, then I think I have to go with my children. If I'm choosing one, I'm choosing my children in terms of being the greatest impact in terms of my learning, the greatest impact in terms of my why. Both of my kids navigated their way through Waterloo Region District School Board public schools, right through K through 12, and have launched into successful post secondary and beyond in terms of their young adulthood. And every step of the way, they absolutely taught me what they required, what was needed and necessary from their educators, from their principals and vice principals, and from their peers in terms of um, being successful. And so for me, it was holding a mirror up to me each and every day to think through what is it that I was doing to create those conditions, not only for my own kids in schools, in our schools in the Waterloo region at that time, but most certainly all students within the district school board. And so you're forcing me to choose one. I have a few others that I could absolutely shout out to and share. But I think for me, yeah, I think that my power and my knowledge and my passion has certainly come from them. So shout out to Tia and Nico.
There you go. And yeah, I'm in the same world in their time in school, but my children who are 7, 5, and 3,
Mhm.
they have quickly
Oh,
become
yeah.
my why.
Oh,
So
yeah.
especially
Just
with
wait.
Gen AI stuff, like
Oh, yeah.
I really this is what's keeping me going. It's no, no,
Oh,
no. I
yeah.
have to gotta try to make sure they're living in a world where they have the outcomes that I was able to attain and my kids were able to attain. And there's a lot of competing factors. All right, home stretch. We got three more questions for you as we go. What are you reading or listening to today?
Oh, okay. So I think my reading is really wrapped up in developing my AI literacy and AI fluency. So I'm currently working my way through Co-Intelligence, Ethan Mollick's work from MIT. Yes, I have The Coming Wave also sitting there. That's next. And so that's definitely what I'm reading. What was the other?
Oh,
You're,
some people are just, they like listening to podcasts or
oh
other
yeah,
things, audio.
podcast,
So I don't
of
know if you're
course.
not, that's fine. But if,
No, so I think more of a guilty pleasure would be Wiser Than Me by Julie Louise Driver. And she interviews iconic women and just, I love hearing their stories.
nice.
And then, of course, Harvard Business Review has Women at Work, which really looks at women in leadership positions and is able to really just affirm and share the work of incredibly female leaders while also really painting a picture of the realities around what that looks like in the workplace, especially in the C suite or in executive leadership positions. And then finally, I was introduced here in the Upper Grand District School Board to a podcast that is near and dear to many here in our board and have come to really look forward to the weekly drops. And that's Hard Fork. And that's with, have you heard of Hard Fork? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's entertaining, but yet incredibly informative in terms of what is currently happening in the world of tech and AI. And so Hard Fork is one that we definitely listen and then talk about together as a team.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
That's great that you got something that you can have a shared sort of a book clubbish type deal. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Great. Yeah. Hard
Exactly.
Fork's on our list of stuff we always recommend
That's
too. And then what about when it's just, okay, enough trying to learn everything new. I just need to veg and then
yes.
do something just
Yes.
to shut things off that is, and the more mindless, the better. But maybe it doesn't have to be mindless. But I'm
Yeah.
just always curious when people share their guilty pleasure, whatever, like
Yeah.
streaming. What is a thing that you do to get away?
Yeah, so I'll do from time to time, I'll do some Netflix, but I think I think oh gosh, the one with Nicole Kidman was the most recent one. I totally just forgot. The Perfect Couple, I think was on Netflix. Just finished watching that one. But I do really enjoy physical activity. I do enjoy heading out for Pilates and yoga and spin classes. I like being outside. I've got a puppy. I like going for long walks in the park. So there's a lot that I do to unplug, decompress, and pull away from the pace and the complexity and the challenges of the work. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I intentionally do that. I've got great
Well,
friends, incredible family. So they keep me super grounded as well.
and finding just more of an appreciation for nature outdoors than I ever used to, because
Agreed.
it's so important. Like we used to do it naturally without even thinking of it, just was the part of our day. But now when we do it, it's, oh, this is such a contrast and
Yes.
so good for
Yes.
the soul. All right.
Yes.
Last question. You're now a you're now a tour guide for the Upper Grand region. So give me one or two places that I should go that might not, that maybe are hidden gems, if you will. Just this, hey, check this out if I'm in the region. Where should I go?
Listen, I don't know if you've ever heard of like a town called Orangeville.
I have. I'm trying to think if
Okay.
I've been to
Well,
Orangeville. I feel like I've driven through there to golf somewhere at some point. Maybe I have, but it's been a while. Tell me about Orangeville.
so I've heard of Orangeville like my whole adult life. I think I've driven through it a dozen times prior to joining Upper Grand. But I have absolutely come to adore the community of Orangeville, the restaurants, the shops, their main street, absolutely incredibly quaint, independent shop owners, incredible restaurants, like I've shared and said repeatedly, coffee shop, but it has been quite a pleasant surprise. And yeah, Orangeville. Don't be
Okay.
sleeping on Orangeville. I got to tell you. Yeah,
All right.
great place.
Good. That's
Yes,
fantastic. Listen, I so appreciate your time. It was
my
great
pleasure.
getting to know you. And again, as we talked earlier, paths have crossed on social spaces for a long time, but I don't know
Mhm.
that it ever actually had a conversation with you. So I'm so glad I reached out, and I'm so glad you said, sure, I'd like to come on. And now we just found out we're going to get to hang out together at a conference in a week or so. So that's
That's
even
right.
better.
That's right.
Exhausting.
Excellent. Looking forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah, and all the best with all of the challenges that you're facing. I know
Thank you.
you'll do really well, and
Oh,
I'll just
thank
it's
you.
great to
It's a
be
team.
on your side. Yeah,
It's a team. I'm just grateful to be surrounded by incredibly intelligent, brilliant, hardworking people.
you fit right in. You fit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Gene.